Welcome back to the speaker track. We are talking today about the speaker one sheet and getting the gigs. So excited. So let's kind of do a roll call here and really do not worry. And Melissa's already said she's eating, so that's why she's put her name on. But I would love to know, did anyone get a chance to either watch the speaker one sheet modules or start their speaker one sheet?
I watched and I started it.
Woohoo!
I
Nice
didn't
job.
get very far, but I at least have it in my Canva and I've started working on it.
I'm so glad. And I know Sarah has because, and I love it, Sarah. I was just going to say, she said, I watched it. Girl, so proud of you. And she showed me it was looking so good. I have some thoughts and I was going to mark but I didn't hear back if you wanted me to mark it. I don't like to go where I'm not invited. So if you want advice or if you want thoughts or whatever, please let me know. Unless I give an actual assignment, like, yes, you need to send me your video and I'm going to give you feedback. Too bad. But anyway, I would love to know if you want any of that. Oh, you're so cute. I loved it. Loved that you ladies are moving forward. Did it feel good to feel like you're actually like, I am doing speaker things. I'm doing this one sheet and it's helping me. I can't tell you if I had $1 for every time people have gone through this track and they've they've been slaving over the speaker one sheet. I remember some people, it took them like 3-4 weeks to do their speaker one sheet. Please don't be that. But it took them a long time. They just had a hard time talking about themselves. It was just really hard. But one of them I remember, and this happened several times, but one of them I remember, she was one of the ones that was like, I don't want to do this. And then I had encouraged them to submit for a speaking assignment. I can't remember if she submitted or someone just asked her, but either way, she was like, oh, I need a thing right now. And guess what? I had my bio and I had my speaker one sheet, and it was, even though it was rough, I had everything in one place. And so I knew I could send something. And I was like, that's the power of a speaker one sheet, because you never know when you're going to be asked to speak or when you have to send information, and it looks so professional. It looks like you're a speaker. So fantastic. I would like to point out this is the first assignment I have fully completed. Melissa, can we take a moment and give her some love? Yeah, that's awesome. Sarah, you're on track. I love it. That's it. You just keep taking those baby steps. What about Bob? That's what we do. So we are going to talk about any questions that you have on the speaker one sheet. As you were going through that, do you have anything that you wanted to ask me across the board or any questions on that? Crickets. Okay, then it sounds like you just want to keep watching, keep doing, keep hammering away at it. I would encourage you on the bio. I would love for you to create a bio that is memorable. Now, if you're like, I don't know how to create a bio that's memorable, then just get a bio on there, right? Just start. But if you look at like Meredith Powell, she has another name in there, Meredith something Powell, but it's Meredith Powell. And look at the one that Clint Pulver, it's in our guidebook, and that should also be in the homework in the speaker track. If you look at those bios, you'll see that it's almost sometimes like a narrative and almost like a promotional bio. And that's good for you to have just a regular bio that's kind of like just, it's vanilla. It's just, it's got your most important credibility sentence at the beginning, hits the high notes, why people should listen to you, what pain point essentially you're solving. I have helped hundreds of people achieve their goals through 5-minute habits and blah, 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 whatever, right? It's just kind of your basic standard boilerplate bio. But then you can do one for an audience that you're speaking to. So say you're going to speak to mompreneurs, you'd want to tailor that a little bit and have some of your personality in there, have some energy. So like on my website, I have a little thing that is introducing me, like about Connie. And so I introduce myself and I say, yeah, mother of 7, and I love my kids, but not after 9 p.m. And I'm able to survive, but with large quantities of decadent chocolate, blah, blah, blah. You don't want to be too campy and annoying, because that's like the Southwest when they kept saying, hey, get out of the aisle. We're trying to bag up the plane, right? And after you've had like 5 flights, you're like, I'm so done with this joke. Like, please stop. So you don't want to be too campy, but something that shows your personality. That's really important, because they're going to be going through 35, 60 speaker one sheets, and they're going to be scrolling through, looking on their email and going, is this person, and if you have some personality on there, that can spark something. If they laugh, that's a really good thing. If they can chuckle, or they can say, oh, that's cool, that's something I didn't know. Like when I get to the end, I say, oh, I'm take it with a grain of salt, best-selling author, I'm a national speaker, best-selling author, media contributor, podcast host, and mother of 7. And once they get to the mother of 7, then suddenly they're going back and going, wait a second, she does this as a mother of 7. That's a little bit more of a personality fingerprint than just saying, I do this and this and this and this. And they see that all the time. They're just like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, whatever. You still have it. You still need it for credibility. But if you can add a little personality, a little panache, so good. So that's what I would encourage you on your bio. Do a boilerplate one, just your basic, and then kind of play with it and say, what could this be like? And check the Clint Pulver one, check Meredith Powell. I have to think about it like I did my dating profile and add a little humor. Exactly. That's exactly right. I like long walks in the rain, right? This is so late, but that's exactly right. So have a little personality in there that makes you feel like they get a taste of who I am and who I'm going to be, either in a coaching call or on stage or in a workout, a breakout or a training, something like that. All right. And also on the speaker one sheet, think back to where you have either done a podcast, where you've been on an interview, where you've been on spoken at something. I would put that on there with your icons of where you've spoken. So I spoke at BYU Education Week. Yeah, I put that icon on there. Spoke at BYU Women's Conference. Yeah, that's an icon to put on there. All of those things are icons that you can put on there so that people know, oh yeah, she's actually spoken. All right, so that's the speaker one sheet. Is there anything else on that? All right. I just got asked back to speak at the Single Mom KC next year. What? That's awesome. Oh, I can't wait for you to do the keynote on that. And if you're thinking about your keynote right now, you could start preparing. Like if you're like, I need some keynote, idea of where I'm going to do a keynote. And like I said before, it's so much easier to do a keynote for the audience that you're going to speak to instead of just some boilerplate keynote. Like I'm throwing it out there. Again, it's very good to have that, but it's so much easier when you can speak to the actual audience. So that's fantastic. I'm so excited for you. That'll be great. Let me know if you need help with that. All right. And again, I will keep reminding you every week. I'm inviting you to take 5 minutes and just say a prayer and say, Heavenly Father, where would be a good place for me to speak? What would be a good organization? What would be a good place that has the audience that would want to hear what I have to hear or what I have to say? Where would that be? How would I connect with them? What does that look like? If you just 5 minutes quiet, brainstorm, I bet you cookies to a donut, a name will come to mind. Really, truly. And it can be from a lot of times it's the connections that you've made with people in a variety of settings. So yesterday when I was speaking at BYU with Nolani, she's the professor that invited me to come and speak to the experiential design class. And she asked me to come and speak last year. And we had met at the Sorensen Leading by Faith conference. And we were at the VIP table. Elder Holland was doing a luncheon thing. So we're at the VIP table and I'm sitting with these professors that are dry as bones. And it was so boring. And I was like pulling, blood from a stone, a conversation. And all of a sudden here comes Noelani and she's from Hawaii. And she's like this fresh fuchsia flower. And she just comes in and sits down. I'm like, it's on, you and I. And we were like talking like this over the table until finally I just moved over so we could talk. It was so funny. And Noelani's cracking jokes and the professors are just staring and I'm roaring. It was so funny. Anyway, but because we made that connection, we're like, there's something here. And it was so lovely that when I saw her yesterday, she got married. A lot of things have been happening for her in this last year. She's like, it's time. I'm ready to do something. Are you ready to do something? I said, well, I'm ready to do something. Let's go to lunch, right? So it's those kind of connections that one thing will lead to another. And you're having a podcast is a great way for that. Just today, I had coached with Chad Hymas last week, and he said, Connie, you probably already know a lot of people. And I'm like, who would be good for me to reach out to about doing bigger keynotes and things like that and places that I can do that? And he's like, you want to connect with Brooke Summerhays? And I was like, okay, I don't really know her. So I went on her Instagram and connected with her. And how did I lead with it? A podcast. I said, I looked through your thing. I love what you're doing. And I'm wondering if you'd be interested. If he suggested that we connect. He said, give me, name drop me. So I said, he suggested we connect. And I would love to see if there's some content here that maybe I can invite you on my podcast. Well, then I realized she has a podcast. So a podcast is a great way to bridge this. You're giving a value add to people. And so it gives them a reason to want to talk with you or help you because you're doing something for them. And they're naturally going to say, well, yeah, I'm happy to do X, Y, and Z. And then look at what the possibilities are. So having a podcast, great way to do that. If you don't have a podcast, another way to do that is you can always say, have 3 questions and say, can I pick your brain on something? So and so, try to find a connector person. So, like with me, it was Chad Hymas. If I didn't have a podcast, I'd say, Chad Hymas recommended that I connect with you. I just have 3 questions. I've seen what you do. I love it. I just have 3 questions. Is it possible for us to just chat for like 5-10 minutes? Or is there a way that I could ask you those questions if you're okay to help me out with some of this? And I just asked somebody yesterday and she said, oh, I'm crazy. We're going to go on a trip, but if you want, Marco Polo me, and then I will answer. And she did. It was so great. And it's almost like you're right there. So it's a little bit more intimate than just like typing it out. So again, these are great ways to make connections, and one thing can lead to another. And yet, well, I speak about blah, 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 blah. It's really being a confident, bold self. It's just, this is part of your conversation. Oh yeah, I speak about blah, blah, and blah. And I noticed you speak about, or you post about, or you whatever. That's so awesome. So you're not like sitting in it, but you're leading and sharing and connecting people with it. And that's what helps get the gigs, and in a very organic, intimate way. Now Noelani and I are going to go to lunch, and what kind of cool things are going to come out of that, I have no idea, but I can't wait. And lots of good things can happen because she's got tons of resources, especially through BYU. So you never know, but it's still a win-win for her. I'm still bringing value to her thing, and I got to teach a class that she didn't want to teach. So I'm like, I'm in, I can do it. So that's just a thought with what you were saying. Any other questions? Any other thoughts on this?
This is a little bit off of what you're talking about, but I can really I feel a lot of fear like in my belly when I am thinking about doing my keynote somewhere big. And I know years ago, before, it felt like it felt really far away, right? And so I was excited about it, and I was like, one of these days I'm going to be up on that stage, right? Like I always dreamed about like getting to speak at doTERRA or something like that. And now that it's like, okay, I mean, that could happen at some point, right? Not right this minute, but that is a possibility. I feel all of this fear coming up. So I'd love to just talk that through if we could do that.
Okay, so you've already said, I was going to ask you, where are you feeling it in your body? So it's in your stomach?
Yeah, I feel it like right in my belly.
So what is the thing that is the most fearful? Is it a big audience? Is it you're going to forget what you're supposed to say? Is it they don't want to listen
number
to you?
2.
Okay, so you're worried that you're going to forget what you are.
Yes, because I definitely I really struggle with keeping my thoughts in track. I feel like it's starting to get better. And I know that it'll come with practice, but and being up on stage too. Like when I'm doing my podcast, that just feels so easy to me because it's just me in my pajamas in my closet. But when I've spoken on stage, it always takes me a couple minutes to get comfortable, and then I feel better. But then I get too caught up in like, and not in a good way. And what are they thinking? Am I losing them? And, I know it's good to still keep a gauge on what they are, how they're responding so you can shift your gears. But I definitely am worried about like being able to just go up and speak without having to look at notes and, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. So interestingly, some of the things that I experienced yesterday that I wanted to share with you go right in line with this. It's so good. But first, let me just say, Brene Brown talks about acknowledge the fear. So acknowledge the fear, actually embrace the fear, make friends with the fear, sit with it and go, okay, I am afraid of this. And then define and identify those specifics of what you're afraid of. I'm afraid I'm going to forget. I'm afraid I'm going to fall. I'm afraid that they're not going to be interested in what I'm doing. I'm afraid they're going to fall asleep, or they're going to be distracted and they're going to go on their phones. Right. I don't know if you remember Alicia Keys. Do you remember that singer? And she sings, I Keep Falling. There's this clip of her talking about in an interview. She said, yeah, I was singing, and they showed she's singing on stage and she's walking and she's like, I keep falling. And she falls right off the stage. It was so funny. That was like a big fear, right? That she was going to fall off the stage, and right in her song. But that is now iconic, right? So it worked in her favor. So I would identify what those specific fears are, and then go about start solving them. What can I do to ameliorate that? What can I do to have that not happen? And then Brene Brown says, then start doing something to express gratitude or joy about that thing. I'm so grateful I get to have the opportunity to be on a big stage to share my message that is so core to my soul, that I'm so excited I get to share it. I don't care if they don't want to listen. I don't care if I forget. I remember Anita Baker. Anyone remember her? She's a Black woman that's a singer. And she, big singer, Grammy winner, everything. And she took time off to go and be with her mother who was sick. I think she had cancer. And she said, all I did was bake cakes every day. It was so stressful. She gained like 30 pounds. So she came back to singing and she said, I was 30 pounds heavier. And even one of my first few, concerts, she's like, I couldn't remember the words of the song, but guess what the people did? They sang along with her. And she was like, it was okay. It was all okay. So things like that of just telling yourself, people have forgotten their points before, and people go on. As long as you're not making a big deal about it, people go on. Or you can make a funny about it and maybe have a few jokes in the hopper that you could say. I usually say, see, mother of seven, the after effects, right? The sequel, something like that. I'll say something funny. So acknowledge the fear and sit with it, identify what the specific fears are, and then start solving it. So for example, forgetting things, I was worried about that too. I always had my papers with me for years. And then I realized I need to let it go. It's my binky. So I did. And now I just transferred to the slides. So on my slides, on your presenter's view, you have the notes. And now I just put all my information on there. I put full on quotes on there. And it's awesome because I just went to do this. I gave this presentation to Noelani's class last fall. Now, instead of having to go and look for my paper copy and then see all the things that I put in there, it's all on the slide. So I went through and reviewed my slide. So easy. It was slick. So I have quotes on there. I have the bullet points. I have a keyword that will help me know the story I'm going to tell. So all I need to do is glance and say, I see Jedi story. And I'm like, oh, I know exactly what I'm telling. And the next thing I go, President Nelson quote, purpose and identity. I know exactly what I'm saying. So just do those things so you can remember. Another thing is to put it on your fingers. I will do that if for some reason the presenter view is not working or they don't have a monitor. They don't have a way for me to have it. I'll put it on my fingers and then I will just memorize. It will be the key story or the first sentence of that section. So if I'm saying, just a few years ago, I felt a rumble. Then I will remember just a few years ago, I felt a rumble, the retreat starting story. And then I've got that whole section. That's like 6 minutes right there. That's on my thumb. And then I can just go down to the next finger and the next. So those are some tips that you can use if that's helpful. The other thing you were worrying about, that everyone worries about is, are they going to, I'm thinking about, what are they thinking about me? Are they going to like what I'm saying? Are they going to listen? Are they going to be like excited, or are they going to be distracted or whatever? So yesterday I'm speaking and, I've done it before and I had updated. So I had fresh stories and things like that, but she wanted essentially the same content. I was doing 3 P's for their fabulous future self. It was purpose, presence, and be a people person. And so these are 3 things that they can do that can help them be successful now and in the future. So I'm getting ready to start and I get this clear feeling to share a couple of stories and really personal ones I don't usually share. And I'm like, what? So I stand up and I start sharing these stories and it happened again and again and again. And I was like, and I get emotional, at different times when I'm speaking, but maybe twice, sometimes maybe 3 times in a keynote. You just don't want to do that. And I try not to. I really try not to. But there's stories that I'm telling that I'm still really connected to, and it's hard not to, or a quote or a thing that I feel so passionately. But usually, generally speaking, not more than that. There was like 6, 7 times I'm literally stopped and I can't speak. The spirit was so thick in that room. It was crazy. And I found myself saying things about their chosenness, that being at BYU and my experience of coming there, and my family left the church, and see, it's still tearing me up right now. And that my family left the church. But when I did, and I started that, and I was on that path, it changed my life. And that the Lord, everything good that happened after that can be traced back to that decision. And them being at BYU, this is a sacred trust. And it's a time for them to see what the Lord's going to do with them. And man, I felt like this mom talk. Like I was just like, do this. You've got it. You're majestic. And I could feel their spirits were so majestic. And they had no clue. They're like in semi-clean hoodies. And they're like, I just got to get done with this class and last till 1:45, And I'm watching them while I'm doing this. It's so unusual. And I felt like it was almost like a conference talk. I was talking so much about the Savior and about their lives and their patriarchal blessings. And you guys, I was like, inside there was like, it's like an out of body experience almost. I'm like, they're wanting more business. And I shared a lot about business and Chick-fil-A and their model and all these things. I'm sharing all this business stuff. Don't worry about it. But I was like, oh my gosh, I know these guys especially are going to be like, can we get over this? So I'm watching. And there's people writing stuff down, but then there's some that are not. And they look like they're just staring at me. Like, you know, when they're just staring, they practice the stare so that it looks like they're awake and focused, but they're not. And they're actually somewhere else. I was like, oh my gosh, are they even getting anything out of this? You guys, I'm not kidding. Like about 2/3 of the way through, I just thought, I don't know how this is going. And I don't know if Noelani's going to get done and go, thanks so much. You know, she's not going to want to do lunch again. And I really did not know. And afterwards, I kid you not, kids are gracious. They've been taught to be gracious. She's told I'm sure before the speaker comes, you be nice. So people are saying nice things, but I had several who specifically came up to me and said, that was for me. Those experiences were so powerful. This thing that you shared, that was for me. And this gal came up to me and she said, I had already left and the spirit told me to come back and tell you that what you shared, this thing and this thing, they were for me. They were for me. We're moving to Las Vegas in just a little bit. And that was exactly for me. So it made sense to me where he was taking me, right? With these things that just were not typical, but they were just staring. A lot of the time they were just staring at me and they were not necessarily super responsive. So I talked to my 24-year-old who's going to BYU and I talked to her about it. And I said, this is how my experience was. Is that normal? She's like, oh yes. She said, Mom, especially the way that you speak, you're so high energy and it's probably fire hosing them. And for me, like even for me, I'm taking it in. So I'm just looking at you. And one of the gals said that to me after. I'm not trying to belabor this, but this will happen to you. One of the gals told me after, she said, I couldn't write fast enough. I couldn't take it in fast enough. So I was literally just staring at you to catch every word that you were saying. She was staring. She was straight up, like right there in front of me. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Could have told me that. That would have been nice. But anyway, so try not to, it's so important to read the room, but assume positive intent. Yes. Try not to read the room for sure, but try not to infer your own fear from that room. If you can see that there are people writing, if you can see that there are people nodding, go with those people, look at those people, focus on those people because you know that they are engaged and everybody else, whatever, you're just going to need to do what you can do, but say a little prayer. A lot of times I will ask a thought-provoking question and have them write down. And that's exactly what I did. And that gives me time to pray. And I'm saying, Heavenly Father, am I on the right track? Am I on the right track? And I didn't get a no. So I'm like, okay, we're going. But if you ask a thought-provoking question, have them do that, that buys you a minute, 30 seconds to a minute to regroup, look at the room, feel and say, am I on track? Is there anything else I need to share? And oftentimes that's where I'll get another story or another idea of like, I was going along, I was going to skip right to the next thing because we're getting close on time. And I immediately, a millisecond, it was go back to that slide and get feedback. Did anyone find one of those things that was going to help them that would be different if they had their purpose, whatever? And they were sharing because anytime you're talking with people, you want to be as engaged as possible, especially in a classroom setting like that or a more intimate setting. You want them talking as much as possible so they will stay engaged. So anyway, that was something to consider. That's what I want to talk about, what they're thinking. So don't worry about it. Have some of those things in the hopper, look at the people that are engaged. And then remember, sometimes when they're staring, they're taking it in. And that probably would have been a good indicator for me to slow down. Does anybody else speak faster if they get nervous? That's me. I start speaking faster. It's almost like I will pummel you with content so you will give me some kind of reaction. And I have to remind myself to take a pause and slow down and reset the energy. So it's not up, and then reset and get back to normal. So that is something to consider. Just change your pacing. If something like that is, you're feeling like, I don't know if I'm reaching them, change the pace, change it up, ask a thought-provoking question, skip to something else that say you were going to go to this thing, but then skip to it in your mind and go, I'm going to tell this story. All right. Any other questions? All right, this week is on Get the Gigs. So again, just keep moving forward on your speaker one sheet. Don't stress it on Get the Gigs. If you're like, just listen to the module while you're doing your makeup, if you need to do that. If you haven't finished your speaker one sheet, focus on that first. That is so important. In order to get the gigs, you got to have a speaker one sheet. So focus on that first. And then you're welcome to mark on me or send me your rough or if you have any questions at all. The Get the Gigs is really good for you to be thinking about right now. And every week almost, I'm inviting you to think of an organization or something that you can do so that you can already be thinking ahead or submitting to Get the Gigs. So I'm grateful that you ladies are going to be doing Life After Divorce. That's so good. But be thinking of what other places you can speak that would be your target market. So I want to give you a couple of tips for Get the Gigs, if you don't mind, and just share a couple of thoughts and ideas. And then you'll watch the module and it will give you more ideas and other things. So first and foremost for getting the gigs is choose your topic. Make sure you're really clear about your topic, because then when you do a Google search, you're going to want to put that topic with a plus sign and then put something like women's conferences, women in business, women goal setting, women something, whatever you want to add on with those pluses. But you know how to do a search, right? You have the topic and then you have a plus sign and then you add on something else like goal setting, atomic habits in real life. I mean, just something that kind of keeps going to what you're doing. Single, happy, post-divorce life, success in after divorce, whatever it is that you want to look up as your search engine words, then look those up. And when you do that search, look down as you start typing in those words, look and see what it pulls up, because Google will keep trying to anticipate what you're wanting to search. So as you start typing those words, look at what it starts pulling up, and it will give you other ideas. It'll start popping up stuff and you're like, oh, I hadn't thought about that one. That's a good one. And that's popping up those highly populated searches. So that's a good thing to be looking at. And then you can put a plus conference, plus workshop, plus masterclass, plus webinar, whatever it is that you want to look at to see who's out there doing what you're doing and how are they doing it. And then once you see that, you want to see who's doing it the most successfully. And then who's doing it the most successfully that is most like you and the message that you want to share. Another thing to look for is where the gaps are. So like I mentioned a long time ago, Brooke Romney, when I interviewed her, she was talking about, I asked her how she got started in this, because she was doing, journalism up on the Hill in Washington, D.C. And she said, I was needing help with raising my kids and like finding out tips and tools for raising my own children. And then I realized I was talking to different moms in the neighborhood and they were needing the same thing. So that's where I started kind of doing tips and things like that. But she said, I noticed when I went on, there was a lot of stuff for young kids, lots of stuff for young kids, but there wasn't much for teens. So she said, I saw a gap and I filled it. And that was genius, because now she's done 52 manners for teens. Now she just released 52 manners for, I think it's middle schoolers or elementary school or something like that. It's middle schoolers. So she just released a new book, but now she's back to that market that would have been hers, years ago, but she saw the gap. And that's what you want to do, is where's the gap? When you start seeing what other people are doing that you're doing, what are they not doing that you could be doing? And that's where you're going to fill that gap. Susie was just talking about in the last speaker session, she is collaborating. This is a great thing to do when you're at that place, but she is collaborating with another Studio 5 contributor. So Susie does healthy cooking, but that's all she wants to do. She just wants to teach it, all the things about it, what's healthy, foods and things like that, and putting them together. But another contributor, Mickey, she does mindset. She's all about healthy eating mindset and what goes into that for you to want to eat healthy and then sustain eating healthy. So it's a natural collaboration. Can you see the beauty in that? For them to do a master class together, for them to do a class together, they're going to do a cooking class for the holidays, freezer meals, makes total sense. Staying in that mindset during the holidays, and then she's going to teach you the how. Great collaboration. And now they're going to share each other's audiences. So gorgeous. So that's something to consider, is you see who's doing that out there, who's doing it most like you, where the gaps are, and then start looking for collaboration. Ooh, they may need someone to come on an IG live, or they may need someone to come on their podcast. And you can lead, Tanya, with your podcast, reach out to them and say, I do what you do, only I do this. I actually do the how of doing the 5-minute habits. You're all about mindset on it, or you're all about the supplies. Maybe they've got a product that they've got for doing, awesome habits and stuff. So they could talk about different ways to track your habits. So slick. And then you could invite them on and you can start a collaboration. So again, there's lots of different kinds of speaking. It doesn't have to be from stage either. It can be on Instagram lives. It can be on your coaching calls. It can be on a masterclass, all of those things. And we're doing these IG lives on Wednesday, and it's awesome. I just got a gal who came to one of our retreats. She does amazing stuff with her business. I mean, she's talking about her ads are $50,000 a month, blah, blah, blah. She's like amazing. She's going to come on to DTLC and teach us, and she's coming on the IG live. So I can leap at that and say, hey, would you mind? I know you got these great things I'd love for you to share, and for them to get to know her. She's just amazing. She's wonderful, and would love for, this kind of collaboration thing to happen back and forth. So a good thing as a speaker is to set up some kind of a vehicle or venue for those collaborations to happen easily. I do a spring cleaning masterclass every spring, every spring. So bring in someone who's going to help you get organized, someone who's going to clean out your closets, someone who's going to help you manage your time, whatever, and make some kind of a consistent venue that people will not only want to put on their calendar, but that people that you're going to invite will be able to plan on and count on, and you can have something that you can lead with when you're inviting people to do. In getting the gigs, you want to create this high water pipeline, and that's what that venue will do, that vehicle will do. It'll create this high water pipeline so it will just drip right on down and flow right on down. That's a really good thing. Another thing to look for in getting the gigs is try to get gigs that you can repeat. So when you do really big stage, these people are doing like 90, 80 gigs a year. A lot of times they're doing one-time one-offs, right? They go, they speak, they leave. And then the next year they want a different headliner. So it's somebody different, somebody new. But you can get a lot of leverage from these speaking assignments, and especially if you make a relationship with them. So for example, I've been doing Education Week for 21 years. I've been doing Studio 5 for 18 years. I spoke for Life After Divorce, and now this will be their third conference. Now I don't know if they'll invite me back, but they invited me back for the first two conferences that they've done. Sorensen Center with the Leading by Faith conference, they already have invited me back. I'm speaking next week. They've had one last fall. They also had another one for women. And now this will be the third one that I'm doing with them. And I can shift it, I can change it, I can adjust it. I'm still talking about my main topic, but I'm just adjusting the way that I do that. So getting these long-term relationships where you get the opportunity, and then what do you need to do? You need to kill it. And that's what they talk about. You kill it. You go in and you rock that stage, whatever it is, whether it's a training, if it's in a classroom, whatever, you rock it. And they'll invite you back, and then they'll invite you back again. And then they'll have you in mind for something else that somebody else wants to have you do, blah, blah, blah. So it's really good to have the high level and then creating those relationships. So when you're looking at organizations, choose ones that you feel like, I would like a long-term relationship with them. I could see myself speaking for them over and over. I really like them. Now it's fine to speak for ones that you're like, hey, it's a one-off, that's fine. But I'm just saying, if you can find that, that's really helpful. Another place to get the gigs is looking for associations. So Chamber of Commerce, business associations, women in business. I'm just saying, for like, if I'm doing it for me, those are all ones that really work for me. There's Women Business Network, there's Business Women something or other, I can't remember. But there's all these women in business and these organizations and associations. Associations are so good, because if you get in with one, that's how, like I said, Dan Clark can get 54 other assignments, 54 other gigs. So pare down and say 3 or 4 that I'd really like to do. And I think we talked before about dental organizations, orthodontic organizations, all of those, they're always looking for speakers. So try to look for an association that has more than just a one-time hit, but that you can do other chapters and things like that. Okay, any questions? All right, let's go to fees. All right, getting the gigs. Oh, one last thing on getting the gigs. Let me share what I learned from Dan Clark, because I really liked this. This was very helpful. Okay, he said, when you go to do a conference, I have not done this. He said, when you get called to do a conference, or when you're seeking about doing a conference or something like that, then ask about the conference and ask these questions. 1, how many other speakers are speaking? 2, how long is the conference? Is it a 1-day? Is it a 2-day? Is it a 3-day? And then ask if there's any concurrent sessions. And then if there are, then you can say, now listen, if they're either you're requesting or they're requesting you can say, well, do you know that I can do 2 keynotes for the one price, and you're only paying for the one airfare? That's selling your services in a better way. So say they're like, oh, we have 8 speakers and it's a 2-day conference. And you can say, well, did you know that I can do 2? I can do a keynote and a training. I can do a keynote and a follow-up breakout. And I can do it for the same price. And you can do that also if they're like, oh, you're out of our budget. And that's where, if you know how many speakers there are, you know how many sessions there are, you can say, well, do you know I could actually do 2 slots for the same price? And that way it's taking it right off your plate of, you know that I'm going to do a great job. You don't have to worry about another speaker or flying them in or another hotel that they're paying for. Think about what the meeting planner's problems are and solve it for them. It's so much better. And then, and say it in that way. I can do I can do my keynote and I can do a 45-minute breakout to follow up on the concepts or to get them to practice it or to have them make a plan so they can actually go back into, the office and be able to make this happen. He also said, when you go to a conference, go check out what other speakers are in the other room and make connections with them. Say, hey, introduce yourself, give them your card, say, what do you speak about? And again, if you have a vehicle, if you have a blog, if you have a podcast, if you have an IG Live, start an IG Live and say, you know what? I do these IG Lives and I would love to have you come on and talk about blah, blah, blah. That's a great value add, and do it with these people at this conference because they're most likely going to have some kind of complimentary thing to what it is you're doing. So that's a really good thing to do. Marilyn Sherman did that. Mel Robbins was speaking in the room next door. She was like, I'm going to go in and see Mel Robbins. So she did introduce, and then I think they ended up going to lunch or something. I was like, oh, way to go. Nice job. So he said, and he's right, market yourself as a speaker. It's our job to tell them who we are and what we do. That's why we're there. And it's not offensive unless you're being offensive about it. It's not offensive because that's your job. You're a speaker. Also, he said, if you are wanting to speak at the Chamber of Commerce, a lot of times they have these fees and sometimes it can be expensive. Reach out to them and say, I am happy to share this really value content. And this is how it's going to benefit your people. Remember your outcomes. This is how it's going to benefit your people. And I would be happy to, my speaker fee is usually X, but I'm happy to do it in trade for a membership at the chamber because I would love to be a part of this chamber. So you can offer to speak in exchange for that chamber fee. And another thing, well, let's just go to the fees. One last thing though, we talked, I think before, just briefly about schools. That's something, if you want to check out schools, check with J. Scott Savage. I did an LDS PMA podcast with him, and you can listen to what he did. His wife was amazing. She set up all their school visits, all the things. And I can't remember if I told you, but Dan Clark was saying back in his day, it was $1,500 a school. So it depends on the school budgets, but you can go anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000, whatever it is. It's depending on what you're speaking on and what high level speaker they consider you and what the need is at the school. If they're like, we really need this, like suicide prevention or whatever. But just know that's another great avenue, is to speak to schools. And even though you're talking about life after divorce, or Tanya, you're talking about 5-minute habits, you could do 5-minute habits for these kids. And the parents, the teachers are listening. And if you're talking about life after divorce, you would talk to the kids about what happens when relationships are difficult, right? Relationships with friends, with family, with those things. So broaden it, but still tie it back to, I know my kids, when we went through the divorce, this is what I did to help them survive that and to do well with that. And of course, schools would be, I would say, would be interested in doing that, even if it's an after school thing that's, more of like a, how they do 6-week courses of like love and logic and things like that. And maybe something like that. Anyway, something to consider about the different kind of gigs. Remember, you're getting practice, you're building your resume, and you're getting your name out there. And that's what matters. All right, let's go quickly to fees. Unless you have any questions, let's quickly go to fees. So on your fee, you want to make sure that you have your speaker fee, and then you have travel, and then you have ancillary or miscellaneous, anything like that, because things will come up. Maybe they mess up your cord or something like that. You want to have some of these expenses that are itemized out. Don't go crazy, but have them itemized out. For sure, the speaking and the travel. And those become negotiating points. So if you have a couple of those things and then they're like, well, your fee's too much, you can say, well, you know what, I'll take off the travel. Or, okay, I can lower my fee, but because you're going to pay for my travel, that's great. Or you're like, you know what, I've got Sky Miles. So you can say, you know what, I'll take off my travel fee and I can do that. Will that help with your budget? That's a really good thing to do. When you are talking fees, it's always important to say, what's your budget, right? And then You always say, well, my typical fee is blank. My typical fee is blank. When I was doing Sorensen, I said, well, the first time they asked me to do it, I was doing it for free, but I said, well, my typical fee is this, but I understand budgets and I'm so passionate about this moral and ethical leadership. I really am. I was like salivating. I'm like, I'm so passionate about it. I'm happy to work with your budget. I always say I'm happy to work with their budget, even though that's my regular fee. And then they're so grateful to, they're like, oh my gosh. And that's what they were. They were so grateful that the second time they asked me to speak, they paid my fee. And it wasn't my usual fee, but it was my like nonprofit fee because it's, for BYU. And they were so grateful. They knew they were getting a high value speaker. And that's important. You don't want to keep dropping it to seem like you're desperate or that they're getting somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. He said, this is Dan. Dan Clark said, let the competition set your fee. So look at what the competition is doing. You can go on eSpeakers. You can go on some of these speaker bureaus and you can look and see what people are charging for the same kind of thing that you would be talking about. A lot of them will be charging anywhere from 10K to 15K. The big names, they go more like 20, 25,000. When you're a bigger celebrity, it's 50,000 to 100,000. And if you're like a Warren Buffett, it's 150,000, something like that, right? So Steve Young was 50,000. So he got 50,000. And then he also had just done the Law of Love. And he said, I also have a book and I'm happy to give a discount on that book if you want to order it. And they ordered 80,000 books. So that's another great thing to do is if you have something, a packet, a download, or something like that, then you can also use that in bargaining and say, I don't think we can pay your fee, and say, well, you know what? If you want to pay my fee, I'm happy to throw in this free download, this free book, discount my book, whatever it might be, something like that. Other ways to, if they can't do your fee at all, if they're like, we just wish we so could, we can only pay you $500 or we can only pay you whatever, then you can say, that's okay. For this time, I do have some options that can be supportive to the fee so I can maintain fee integrity. You want to give them that phrase because they will understand that. You can't do 1,000 for these people and do 5,000 for these people and 10,000 for these people. Word will get around and it's not okay. So to maintain fee integrity, you can say, well, what would balance that out? What would be a value of that is if you will let me do a book signing, or are you going to videotape this presentation? Every time you can get footage, get the footage. Because a speaker's bread and butter is updated footage. And then you can ask them, who's filming? Is it professional filming or is it like Uncle Bob, right? Is it a professional filming? And then you'll know if it's worth it. Another thing you can do is do an email blast. Say, well, is it possible I have this free opt-in? Can I do an email blast on your email list? You're not going to take their names. No one would give that up in their right mind, but you'll say, can you put this email blast? I'll send it to you and you could just send it out for me. Would you mind doing an email blast on this? That's another thing that you can do. Okay, let me see if I've got everything. A really important thing is give them a freebie every time you do speak. And so when you're talking about your fee or you're talking about having a speaking gig, you say, you know what, I also provide this free template for blah, blah, blah. Tasha DaCosta, she does a template. She sent it out. Hers was $27. It was a one-page website template. It almost broke her email. It was that popular. Okay. So if she's going to get up on stage, she could tell these people who are thinking about hiring her to speak and say, I have this template. It broke my email almost, and I'm happy to give it to you guys for free. And that helps them to want to keep fee integrity or to say, wow, that's a really great thing. Or she could say, if you can't pay my fee, then if you want to put that out as an email blast and people see if they want to charge, pay $27, that would be great. Oh, and then asking if someone's asking you to speak for their company or whatever it is they're asking you to speak for, ask if they have an association. Do you have an association or do you have other chapters in other states? I would be happy to come and speak for them as well. And especially if they can't do your fee, then that's a way for them to sort of save face and say, oh yeah, like we could recommend you to our other chapters or other sister cities or whatever it might be. So ask, don't hesitate to ask about these opportunities. It's not, especially if you're not being annoying about it, what you're doing, they're in business and they recognize this is your business. You're a speaker. So think like a speaker and say, I, I have these testimonials. People love what I'm doing. I'd be happy to share this with one of your sister chapters, one of your sister, if it's like Caldwell Banker, I'd be happy to share this with another real estate office or another brokerage. Do you have any suggestions, or do you have any of those? So don't be shy. And they did say, both Chad and him said, if you have a book, you can negotiate a better fee. So that's something to consider, is as a speaker, being able to do a book. Now, I have wanted to do something for a long time, and I just put it on my bucket list to, okay, we're doing this. And I don't know exactly when, but for a long time, I've wanted to do a sort of a chicken soup for the soul with the DTL women. So teaching these, are you feeling the rumble? Oh, here comes Tanya. Are you feeling the rumble? And then teaching those 5 filters that we do in our discovery call to help them to be ready to move forward, right? That'd be a great book to do for a speaking assignment or speaking something, and then spotlighting and featuring you ladies in this book. So now you are part of a book. So that gives you a whole reason why, if you're going to go speak somewhere and say, you know what, my story is in here about how this particular principle helped me, and here you go, either purchase or you can give it for free or whatever. So it can kind of be this lost leader, but it's, again, it's another value add. All right, I've totally fire hosed you with lots of ideas. I'm checking to see if there was anything that I missed. Okay, I don't think I missed anything. Was this helpful? Did you get some helpful things? It will help. Okay.
I was going to say, I feel like I'm at this tipping point of like going over that point to getting someplace. Cause I tell you, one of my big struggles is like, you're setting everything up to do this. And I'm so overwhelmed with the fact that I have a full-time job that I've got to be at still for a while, that I'm just like, I'm still just trying to find, like, what is this fit for me, and why, like, what is this direction that I'm supposed to take? And I still don't know 100% sure, but it's like, it's just slowly forming. It's slow, but it's like I can slowly see it starting to come together, and it's still not all together, but like this stuff is like, okay, I'm going to get to this point, and maybe, I don't know if I'm going to stay here forever. That's just been kind of like my safety thing. And it's been like this big fear of like, well, when will, because you want to have the plan, you want to know what's going to happen. So how long am I going to stay here? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? And it's just like, okay. So that's why I've kind of, my personality, I've kind of hesitated a little bit to just go full force, because I don't know what I'm going full force to. So I'm just kind of pushing myself to progress. But it's like, today I feel like I'm teetering on this edge of like, oh, okay, here we go.
Yes.
And I have to tell you, one cute little thing. I do this mindfulness group every Thursday on the unit with the mental health patients. And last week they were like, do you have this recorded? Because I told them, oh, you can look up these and these, and you can find this and this. Like, we want you. And I was like, I can record this and put it on your YouTube thing. And I was like, because I always say thank you. I've been practicing, relaying this and this and that. And I'm like, that just like gave me this whole other idea of things of like, I'm like, I already have a microphone. I just haven't done any of the things yet. And I want to do some things in the future, like the podcast, but I'm not ready. I can't add it all on my plate. But I thought it was really cute that they wanted me to record it so that I could give them the YouTube link so that they could go home and listen to me.
Okay, Melissa, this is huge. And ladies, this is huge. Watch where you draw. Where are you drawing? Where are you already drawing interest so that you're not chasing people down? If people are already saying, we want you, this was so good, start there. Start there. Chad Hymas, remember, one church speaking gig led to 82. So one little thing that you're doing right here, you're exactly right. Break out the microphone. Do you do it on Zoom or do you do it in person?
I do it in person.
Okay.
But I would go home and do it. Yeah, I would set up my camera and record it at home and put it on the YouTube.
And then don't show their faces, right? Do it from behind or get their waivers, have them sign waivers, whatever, but just have that focused on you so that they can see you're teaching, but you're the focus. Record it, upload it on your phone, record it onto YouTube. Just start organic. Not, you don't even need to make it all fancy. That was my podcast. I just threw it out there like tomato plants, like I said. So just start. And then if you want to do something more with it and something more with it, feel free. But that's exactly right. I would invite you, Melissa, to think practice. You're just practicing right now. I'm giving these bigger things to rubber band your vision. I'm expanding your vision, because if I can expand your vision of what's possible and you imagining yourself getting a gig, speaking, doing all that, this little thing down here, recording on a YouTube thing, doesn't look so big. But if you don't have an expanded vision and you're just thinking, oh, I'm going to record myself and I'm going to put it up on YouTube, it feels like right here. But once you've had this expanded vision, big stage, I'm going to be talking to people submitting my one sheet. I'm going to be talking to them about these things, tech timing and slides. Now, this thing is so doable. So I invite you, practice right now with your keynote. Practice right now. Imagine these people and you're writing the keynote for these people, maybe. Practice, practice, practice. It doesn't have to be the keynote that you're going to do forever until you figure out where that sweet spot is. And again, I would go back to where you're drawing. Do you find people asking you questions about how to survive divorce? Or do you find people just talking about mindset? Or do you have people who are asking you about parenting? Like, where is it that you find yourself having those conversations, making a difference, really enjoying those things? Where are you already doing that? And as you kind of even get a piece of cardstock and just put it up and just start sticky noting and saying, I love doing those mindset things. I love having conversations to help people move beyond divorce. I love blah, blah, blah. Put those sticky notes on there and you'll start seeing patterns. You'll start seeing the way, and it will start kind of going like tangled, and it will start kind of showing something to you. And you go, oh, that's what it is. And it's probably going to be some kind of a combo. I watched Ashley Stratton today. She was doing footage at the Speaker Lab. She started off, she wanted to do, was it leadership? And then she wanted to do something to help women. And then it was mindset. And then it was goal setting. And now she's narrowed it down to it's goal setting, but what's stopping you from the goals. And she's talking about fears, triggers for fears, and then being able to move beyond that and doing, was it attention triggers or something? I can't remember the exact name, but now she's got specific things that can help people deal with what stops them from doing goals, instead of just saying, rah, rah, go do your goals. But it's taken her 2 years. So make peace with this. It's all working. It's all combining and it's mattering. You're putting in ingredients and you can't not have one of those ingredients, and it will make something delicious and wonderful. But just keep going. But do help yourself. Start seeing if there's any patterns. Start paying attention to where you love to play, and just see where you're getting results with people, where they're actually going, that was amazing. Hang in there. Try not to be, outcome results oriented. This really is such a process. It's like writing a book. It's just so internal, and so much of you is being excavated and coming out to be able to be shared. So try to enjoy it as much as possible, because it's all part of it. And I bet you cookies to a donut, it'll be part of your keynote story. Promise you.
It's like intense therapy over the past years. You're digging into yourself and all these other things.
Oh, yes. And you're like, not another layer. Like, oh, am I not done with this layer? All right, ladies, this week the focus is on the speaker one sheet. And then if you get that done, then let me look at the homework. And then it's get the gigs. And then if you want to, you can watch the CRM. You do need to do that by the end of, to get your certification. But, a CRM, just listen to the module while you're driving. She just gives you different ideas of CRM. Listen to it on triple speed. It would be good to open the file drawer. It's always good, because then when you get to that point, you're like, oh, I remember there was a CRM that would do X, Y, and Z. Where was that? And then you will remember where that was. Oh, it was on that module. I can look at that module. So for the CRM, just fast, listen to it on high speed. But for the get the gigs, I would listen to it maybe regular speed or 1.5 or something, so that you get that file drawer, but then focus on the speaker one sheet. And let's make that the goal, to get that roughed, and then let's get it final. Okay. The week after that, we're going to be working on your 20-minute keynote, of you being actually able to do 20 minutes of your keynote. So if you're ever like driving around, you're like, oh, I don't have anything to do, because that happens to us so often, then practice your keynote. Practice your keynote. The speaker one sheet's really important because until you get a speaking gig, you don't need to use your keynote essentially. I mean, you can use pieces of it on social media, which is really important to get it out there. But that's why it's important to get that speaker one sheet out there first and then keep massaging that keynote experience. Okay. You ladies are awesome. You sat through the whole fire hose of all of that information. So I hope you get to like shake it off and get a yummy snack and like fresh air. And you'll be like, okay, open the file drawer. I'm going to let it all settle. All right. Thanks, Sarah. Oh, thanks, Tanya. So grateful. You ladies, this is such good stuff. You're going to use it. Trust me. Trust me. I love you. Have a great week. Markle me if you need anything. Okay. Love you.